He was behind the kit in Five Finger Death Punch. Now he's behind the mic as Devil Daddy in Psychosexual. Their new song, Devil from Hell, is out now. Their new album coming out in May. He's Jeremy Spencer, and this is Styles Cast. Welcome aboard. Oh, hold on. There you are. I didn't have you up. There's Jeremy. All right, man. Thanks for coming on and being a part of the show today. And, when we were setting this whole interview up, I was talking with Kurt, your radio promo guy. And I was like, man, am I getting Jeremy or am I getting Devil Daddy in full makeup? I was questioning how this was going to go down today.
It will, once the touring starts, whenever that might be, if we did one of these, you'd probably get me in full makeup. But since we're not touring, it's a lot of work to put that makeup on. So, and I'm in between interviews, going upstairs and recording vocals. So I'm not really in costume mode right now.
Recording vocals. I we'll get into that in just a second. I want to talk about that makeup part. How long does it take you to actually do the whole makeup thing?
I think we have it down to slightly over an hour now. The first time I experimented with trying to figure out how to do it, it took like 6 hours.
Oh man.
And I was like, this will never work. So I figured out ways to cut corners and, just get faster with it. But it was discouraging at first. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this.
I have no doubt, especially, I assume that eventually when touring starts, as you mentioned there, you'll be doing it and getting it down to about an hour. How long does it take you to get the stuff off?
About that long too. There's so much adhesive and airbrush stuff, and then the showers are really long, but it's just part of it. I've always chosen, extravagant, difficult things. Even towards the end of Death Punch, I was painting up and dressing up like a skeleton and wearing masks on top of that for drum solos. So I've never really made it easy on myself.
No doubt. Creating the Devil Daddy character, in your mind, doing this band, did you just not want to be Jeremy on stage and just have something to present to the crowd?
Yeah, it doesn't interest me to just look normal. I always kind of grew up being a fan of Kiss and theatrical stuff, so everything's measured against that. It has to be visually stimulating, and bands like Ghost, Rob Zombie, Alice Cooper, that kind of stuff had a big influence. And I think it's important for the fan to get a really cool spectacle show, whenever you go, or even looking at a record cover, it should be something to look at and experience. I mean, dudes dressed in all black and syncopated head banging and all that stuff. That's cool, but we've seen a lot of that. So I want to do stuff that we haven't seen a lot of. And I'd never seen a Devil frontman. That's kind of why I chose that, because I'm like, well, what am I going to look like? I don't want to be me. I want to look like something that's interesting to look at.
How many designs and different ways of the character did you do before settling on the version that we see today?
Maybe only 2 to 3.
Okay.
There was like a slightly different chin on one of them, and then the horns were white at one point, and I'm like, nah, that's not quite it. And then we finally hit upon it, and we're like, okay, that's the one.
I saw you did a thing with our friends over at Kill Pop, a live stream event. How hot? I mean, I know it was indoors, but how hot was it for you in that suit performing a full set?
It was hot because it was like July 31st, and the air wasn't great in that huge warehouse. So it was warm, but it was also weird because there's no crowd really. So you would finish your song and then you hear 2 people go, but you have to act like you're on an arena because it's on the internet, So that was a little strange. And that was the first time I'd ever done that. That was actually our first show. So we got a lot of weirdness out all at once.
As far as Devil Daddy, does he have a personality that you created yet? Because we're talking, as Jeremy, you and I right now, but as far as Devil Daddy himself, does he have a personality yet?
Oh yeah. He's an extension of me. It's just the quirky, dark, fun side, the mischievous side, the ringleader of mischief, if you will.
All right. You mentioned, you and I talked off a little bit, but as you start to do this more and potentially do in character, what is that character going to be like doing interviews, or are you just going to speak as Jeremy through Devil Daddy?
I'll do both. If we're on tour, I'll probably be in character and I'll go into radio stations and even do acoustic songs or whatever. But if I'm not on tour and I'm not doing any promo stuff at that point, I probably won't dress up.
I appreciate you talking to me as Jeremy, because I know, and trying to talk with Tobias from Ghost for the longest time, he was always in character. You never saw him out of character or talking out of character. So I appreciate the realness now as we do this. Looking at the band itself, Psychosexual, I had to look up the name just to understand, what the definition was. Did you Google different names and, to come up with what this is in terms of the name for the band?
Well, I wanted to have the word sex in the name, and I looked at many different possibilities, and that was the one that kind of leapt off the page.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, that looks pretty cool, and it's just sounds crazy. So I went with it, and all the good names are taken, man. It's tough to come up with a name.
No doubt there. You stepped away from being the drummer from Five Finger. You're now the front man. What led you down the path to want to be, the front guy, to be the singer now?
I just think it's a fun, different experience and challenge. Like I've always written songs and sang on them myself, and I've been, I'm a fan of all kinds of different music. Like when I first started doing this, it was more synth based and like kind of 80s new wave, even Gary Newman meets Devo and Bowie kind of stuff. And then I'm like, I miss heavy music and I miss darker music, and I want to put a band together. So that's kind of how I pushed it forward. And then I was like, well, what's it going to look like? And then that's how that all happened.
Well, and you have all these characters behind you in the band and their mask. Is it a rotating cast, or is it a set group of guys that are with you?
I sure hope it's a set group of guys. I mean, that's how it is thus far. It's been over a year and things are great. So we'll see, I mean, once you get out and start touring, that's when it gets real, and that's when everyone gets to know each other real well. But we seem to get along great, and everyone is happy and understands their role and seems to really give it their all. And it's just a lot of fun, and that's what it's supposed to be about.
Are these guys friends of yours, or did you meet them and audition them to get them into this group?
One of them was a friend of mine, and then he knew the other guys. He's like, I got the guys. So, and it really wasn't much of an audition. It was more like, how's your personality? I've seen that you can play, so it was pretty instant. And then when we got together in a room and jammed, it was like, okay, it's going to be great.
You mentioned earlier how in between these interviews, you're going up and recording vocals. I've read in places that you're working on album 5 at this time. We're getting album 2 in May. Is there is there a timeline right now to get these albums out? Because I've talked to other artists in the past who have said, if I don't get this out within a certain time, I'm going to be bored with it, or it doesn't reflect who I am anymore.
Yeah, my goal, I mean, actually, I'm considering this album 1 because the first one I took down, I may use some of those songs down the road in some form, but I'm actually on album 6 right now. So it's moving fast. I'm trying to release 2 albums a year, kind of like Kiss did in the 70s, every 6 months.
Okay.
It's something that most people aren't doing, and people get bored real fast and they want what's next. So instead of making a record every 2 years or 3 years and touring, now we can make the records and then go on tour, and we don't have to stop. Or if we stop, we can actually relax instead of having to race into the studio and create a record for somebody's, deadline so they can make their quarter,
I appreciate the fact that you're going to do full albums, because a lot of artists these days either do singles or they do EPs. What's your view on the current state of music in that regard?
Well, I mean, everyone's kind of finding their way and what works for them. I'm a fan of albums and holding vinyl in my hands and looking at the album cover, and, I'm older, so that's what I want this to be. I kind of want to bring that back. Not that vinyl doesn't sell, because it's been selling like crazy lately, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I just want it to be a whole event and have people hold the piece of product and get into the whole thing, and then come to the show and see the big spectacle. And then that's what I miss those days. I think it needs to be that again.
Absolutely. You mentioned pulling down those songs. You said on the Drag the Waters podcast that you think you feel that this is more or less the debut of the band. The new album, Unholy Hymns for the Children, May 14th, correct, is the release date?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, it was when we did the first thing, we write fast, and then we threw it up with no promotion, little to no promotion, and then kept writing, kept recording like we're doing now, and Devil from Hell came right away, and I'm like, crap, I wish this could have been the first thing that people heard, you know. But you're constantly evolving and developing as artists, and to me, like, artists, their best work isn't the first stuff necessarily. I mean, a lot of my favorite groups they get better as they go. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this and us. Like, everything's evolving, and even these records that we've made since Devil from Hell are way different than this, and I'm very proud of them, and I can't wait to just keep putting them out, you know.
How's this record in terms of the sound? I mean, Devil from Hell, is this kind of a prelude to what the rest of the record's going to sound like, or is it kind of just dips and dives and valleys in terms of the sound?
Oh, it's all over the place. Yeah, there's not 10 Devil from Hells. There are a couple things that fit in that style, but there's some darker, gothier moments and some poppier elements, and then some extremely heavy moments. So it's kind of all over the map, which I like. I don't want to be pigeonholed and do the same thing. It's boring, man. You know, there are some bands that can do a similar style all the way through for every album, and it works for them. Like AC/DC is the master of it. I don't see how they can keep writing it. And every song kicks ass. I love them to death. You know, I think they rule. But we just want to do different things, you know.
Well, one of the albums you pulled down, I won't even say album, it was an EP, it was the covers thing. Will we ever see that come back out?
I think so. I'm thinking about releasing that maybe for Record Store Day, because that would be a cool thing. And it's not really the band's original material. It's just kind of a fun little thing to have, and their interesting take on those covers. And it's all part of the theme of, you know, it's called Songs to Stalk You By. Yeah. So it's all songs about stalking.
Yeah, I love that. Especially you rap it with Every Breath You Take, one of the creepiest songs in music history, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of people really didn't know that was a song about stalking. It was just this nice song that everyone heard every time they turned on the radio. And then when he came out and said that later, they're like, oh, wow, if you think about it that way, that's crazy.
It's like REM's The One I Love. Like Michael Stipe came out, it's like, stop playing it at your weddings, people. This is not what it's about.
I love that, though. That's the greatest joke. I think that rules.
Mm-hmm. You posted earlier today on your Instagram the hate messages you get. It's so interesting, the amount of stuff. I won't even reread some of the ones you get. How often do you get that stuff? Is it like every day, all throughout the day?
I get a fair amount of it. I also get a lot of people telling me that they're a big fan and they dig the stuff, whatever. It's just, it comes with the territory. There people enjoy typing hateful things and posting it on the internet. That's been that way since the internet started. And, it's when they quit doing it is when there's a problem, so I'm doing something right if I'm getting hated on.
You're taking the time to type something, so you're doing something there, right?
For sure, yeah.
Absolutely. And it seems like rock itself is not even just metal or anything. Rock itself is very inclusive, and they don't like to broaden their horizons. It's like, you got to be this, you got to do this, and that is it.
Well, yeah, that's true, but that's okay, because I've always kind of done what I want. And even in Death Punch, we did what we wanted to. And then we were fortunate enough to have a fan base that latched onto it, and were very supportive. And, I'll find my audience with this. It doesn't have to be, selling out arenas all across the globe like Death Punch did. I already did that once. I'm doing this because it's a different thing for me. I enjoy doing it. I can paint the fantasy and the scenario any way I want because I'm dressed up as this crazy character. So I'll do it as long as it's fun. And when it's not fun anymore, I won't do it because I don't have to.
Well, I love the character, and I look forward to seeing the performance. I talked about that Kill Pop thing that you did, the live stream. Obviously, a little bit bigger of a stage, but what can we expect when you finally hit the road and take this out? When we can actually tour and see shows.
Well, it'll just depend on the venues that we're playing and where we are on the bill, what the budget is. There's a lot of factors, but we'll try to bring as much as we can, as much bang for your buck as we can. We want to make it as exciting as possible. So there will be some crazy things that happen for sure.
I'm looking forward to it. Unholy Hymns for the Children. I love that title for this record. May 14th is when it's going to be hitting stores. Is it going to be digital, CD, vinyl? Or are you going to do the whole shebang?
All of it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Because I, like you, I love holding the CD in my thing. My wife says I'm very strange because I love the smell of a freshly printed record, whether it be a CD or a vinyl.
No, me too. I always, ever since I was a kid, I'd open it and you check the smell,
Thank you. Somebody else. Thank you. She looks at me straight. I'll go to the record store, like,
yeah. They're like, excuse me, sir. I'm like, what, dude? I'm smelling it.
Exactly. Jeremy, thank you so much for the time. Hang on the line real quick as we wrap up. All right.
Cool. Thank you.
This has been the Styles Cast with Jeremy Spencer of the almighty Psychosexual.